By the closing years of the 1930s, America's restless energy was unmistakable. New ribbons of concrete, Route 66, and the expanding federal highway system stitched the country together like never before. Cities from Chicago to Los Angeles were swelling with factory jobs, and rural families dreamed of visiting relatives or chasing opportunities hundreds of miles away. Greyhound, already the country's largest bus operator, seemed perfectly placed to serve this wanderlust. Yet behind the company's slick advertisements and proud Greyhound dog logo lurked the problem. The fleet itself was wearing out. Heavy steel coaches, powered by thirsty gasoline engines, rattled across every mile, guzzling fuel and demanding constant repairs. For a nation eager to travel faster and farther, these old machines felt like relics of a fading era. Something modern, something daring, would have to take their place. General Motors, watching the travel boom, sensed both a challenge and an opportunity. Through its forward-thinking yellow coach division, GM's designers envisioned the bus that would do more than simply replace aging coaches. It would redefine long-distance travel. Their engineers sketched a vehicle built from aircraft-grade aluminum, a material light enough to save fuel, yet strong enough to endure endless miles of rough American pavement. Early drawings revealed graceful curves and sleek ribbed panels that suggested motion even when parked. GM believed that a machine this efficient and stylish could cut operating costs for carriers while dazzling passengers with modern design. When Greyhound executives caught a glimpse of those shimmering concepts, they saw not just a bus, but a rolling billboard for a bold new America, one that promised speed, elegance, and economy, all in a single package. That vision became metal and diesel in 1940 with the introduction of the PD 3751 prototype. At 35 feet long, the new coach struck a careful balance, nimble enough to slip through crowded city streets, yet spacious enough to handle demanding long-distance routes. Power came from the rear-mounted Detroit Diesel 671, a rugged six-cylinder engine celebrated for efficiency and stamina. The placement of the engine behind passengers quieted the ride and freed the cabin from the heat and vibration that plagued older designs. Greyhound managers, accustomed to noisy gasoline clunkers, immediately understood the advantage. Here was a bus that could travel farther on less fuel, break down less often, and look stunning while doing it. If GM could produce it in volume, the PD 3751 promised to change the economics of every route it touched. But the world had other plans. Only months after the PD 3751's debut, global conflict intensified, and by late 1941, the United States was fully at war. Aluminum, diesel engines, rubber, everything essential to mass production was redirected to the military. Civilian bus manufacturing slowed to a trickle, and the Silversides design, though proven on paper and road tests, remained largely a dream. A handful of prototypes and early units entered service, tantalizing drivers and passengers with a glimpse of the future. But the real rollout would have to wait. During those years, the sleek new Greyhound became something of a legend whispered about in depots. A bus so advanced it seemed almost mythical, biding its time until the nation could turn its energy from battlefields back to the open highway. When the guns finally fell silent in 1945, America erupted in movement. Millions of soldiers poured home, eager to see families they hadn't hugged in years. The GI Bill opened doors to college and new careers, sending young people crisscrossing the country. Factories shifted from tanks to consumer goods, creating jobs that beckoned workers from every corner of the map. Greyhound suddenly faced demand on a scale it had never seen. It didn't need hundreds of new buses, it needed thousands. The PD 3751 design, waiting patiently through the war, was ready. GM ramped up production with astonishing speed. By 1947, fleets of gleaming silver coaches rolled out of Midwestern factories. each one a promise of post-war mobility. To Americans hungry for adventure and reconnection, these buses felt like the future finally arriving. As the new coaches flashed along sunlit highways, the public found a name far more poetic than any factory designation. The ribbed aluminum panels caught the light like the scales of a fish, shimmering in ripples of silver as the bus thundered past. Drivers began casually calling them Silversides, and passengers echoed the nickname until even Greyhound adopted it. Newspapers picked it up, and soon the term appeared on ticket stubs and advertising copy. The word carried a certain magic. It suggested speed, elegance, and a touch of mystery. Unlike cold alphanumeric labels, Silversides gave the machine personality. Within a year, few people remembered the official PD 3751 code. Across America, travelers simply waited for the next Silversides to glide into the station, its metallic flanks promising a new horizon. The Silversides looked nothing like the boxy buses of the Depression era. Its rounded profile and clean aerodynamic lines reflected the same design optimism that shaped contemporary aircraft and trains. Up front, a split windshield provided the driver with decent forward vision, while giving the bus a distinctive face that passengers recognized from blocks away. Polished trim and sweeping curves suggested speed even at a standstill. And under bright noon sun, the ribbed sides seemed to ripple with motion. Park a Silversides beside a pre-war coach, and the contrast was startling. Yesterday's squared-off workhorse versus tomorrow's gleaming bullet. For a public fascinated by modernity, from streamlined toasters to futuristic cars, the Silversides wasn't just a bus, it was proof that the future really had arrived on America's highways. Beneath its stylish skin, the Silversides proved every bit as advanced as it looked. The rear-mounted Detroit Diesel 671 engine, already admired in marine and industrial use, delivered steady power while sipping fuel compared to the gasoline guzzlers it replaced. Placing the engine at the back reduced cabin noise and vibration, allowing passengers to talk or nap in relative peace. The aluminum body, inspired by aircraft construction, resisted rust and shaved hundreds of pounds from the vehicle's weight, further boosting fuel economy. Maintenance crews appreciated standardized parts and easy engine access through large rear doors. For Greyhound accountants, the math was irresistible. Lower operating costs, longer service life, and fewer breakdowns. Reliability became the Silverside's superpower, turning it into the backbone of nationwide service almost overnight. Inside, the Silversides offered 37 seats, arranged for both city agility and long-haul comfort, a clever balance rarely achieved at the time. Wide windows framed landscapes that unrolled like a living movie reel, prairies glowing at sunset, neon-lit downtowns flickering past midnight. Passengers swapped stories, shared sandwiches, and sometimes sang to pass the miles. For students and workers priced out of train fares, the Greyhound ticket was a ticket to possibility. Children pressed their faces to the glass, marveling at the endless road. Couples courted across the aisle. For many Americans, a Greyhound trip became their first true taste of cross-country freedom, a memory etched as vividly as the silver coach. Greyhound quickly recognized that the Silversides was more than transportation. It was advertising you could see from a mile away. The company plastered its image on posters, postcards, and glossy magazine spreads that invited travelers to go Greyhound and leave the driving to us. Hollywood directors slipped the gleaming bus into movie scenes to signal modern sophistication. Its streamlined form became shorthand for progress in an age hungry for optimism. Children collected Greyhound brochures featuring the shining coach. Servicemen sent postcards of Silversides buses back to sweethearts at home. By the late 1940s, spotting that ribbed aluminum body on a city street was emblematic of American life as much as a baseball game or a jukebox tune. Proof that the country and its dreams were always in motion.
By the late 1940s, the Silversides had become the thread stitching America together. From the humid streets of New Orleans to the foggy avenues of Seattle, these coaches carried soldiers returning from war, students heading to college, and families seeking new lives. Their polished sides flashed across deserts, over mountain passes, and through small towns that had never seen such modern machines. For many communities, the first sight of a Silversides meant a direct link to the wider world, shrinking the country in a way trains could no longer match. Each arrival at a rural depot felt like a visit from the future. Greyhound understood that the Silversides was more than transportation. It was a marketing jewel. Full-page magazine ads showed gleaming buses beneath bold headlines promising comfort and freedom. Postcards and travel brochures featured their ribbed aluminum bodies gleaming in the sun, inviting Americans to go Greyhound and leave the driving to us. Hollywood caught on too. Silversides buses appeared in background shots of bustling cities, subtly embedding themselves in popular culture. Even people who never bought a ticket came to recognize the silhouette and associate it with possibility, adventure, and the thrill of post-war mobility. Despite its forward-looking design, the Silversides revealed limits as the nation's appetite for travel grew. Air conditioning was still a luxury of the future, so passengers relied on fans and sliding windows during sweltering summer runs across the Midwest and Deep South. Seats, though serviceable, lacked the plushness travelers would soon demand for overnight journeys. On 100-mile hauls, fatigue set in. Yet for many riders, these small inconveniences were outweighed by the excitement of affordable long-distance travel, proof that modern life was within reach even without a private car. The Detroit Diesel 671 engine, celebrated for its toughness, came with its own challenges. To keep those 6 cylinders humming, operators needed regular, meticulous maintenance. Mechanics learned every bolt and gasket, performing careful tune-ups to prevent breakdowns. The ribbed aluminum panels that gave the coach its glittering personality collected grime in their grooves and showed every scrape from narrow city streets. Keeping a fleet immaculate required dedication and cost. Still, Greyhound gladly invested, knowing that reliability and appearance were central to the Silversides legend. Technology never stands still. By the end of the 1940s, larger models such as the PD 4101 and PD 4104 emerged, boasting more seats, better suspension, and improved passenger amenities. These newcomers made the Silversides seem almost quaint, despite its relatively young age. Travelers demanded roomier interiors and air-conditioned cabins. Greyhound, eager to remain the leader, began phasing in the bigger, more comfortable coaches. The Silversides, once the very image of modernity, slowly shifted from cutting edge to classic. Even as newer models took over, the Silversides held a special place in American hearts. Veterans remembered riding home from distant bases, college students recalled first adventures to unfamiliar cities, and families cherished the affordable trips that reunited relatives after years apart. For countless people, a shimmering Silversides had been the backdrop to defining life moments, homecomings, job hunts, and the first taste of independence on the open road. Its silver flanks carried not just passengers, but the optimism of an entire generation. The bus's style left a lasting mark far beyond Greyhound depots. GM refined the Silverside's ribbed aluminum look in later coaches, and competitors adopted similar lines, recognizing how strongly travelers responded to the futuristic aesthetic. Even decades later, echoes of the design appear in motorhomes, modern commuter buses, and retro-inspired vehicles. The Silversides proved that industrial design could be both practical and iconic, turning a utilitarian machine into a cultural symbol. Today, only a handful of original Silversides coaches remain. Some rest in transportation museums, polished to a mirror finish that still catches the light just as it did in 1947. Others are privately restored by collectors who see them not as relics but as living history. At vintage bus rallies, a surviving Silversides draws instant attention. Older visitors pause, smile, and recall childhood trips. Younger onlookers marvel that something so sleek rolled out before their grandparents were born. Occasionally, one of these survivors takes to the road, and for a brief moment, the past seems present again. Drivers on modern interstates slow down to snap photos, captivated by the glint of sun on ribbed aluminum. The deep, steady thrum of the Detroit diesel carries across lanes, unmistakable even among today's traffic. For those lucky enough to witness it, the sight feels like a time machine, proof that an era of optimism and open-road adventure still lingers on America's highways. The Greyhound Silversides was never the flashiest machine, but it became an enduring emblem of freedom and connection. It helped reunite families after war, carried dreamers to opportunity, and inspired a nation to travel. Its influence shaped bus design for decades and etched a silver silhouette into the collective memory of mid-century America. More than 72 years later, its image still suggests endless roads and limitless horizons. The legend of the Silversides reminds us that sometimes the quietest designs leave the most permanent tracks across both land and history.